This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to Monday Podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about multiple pathways, kind of the Science of Addiction cast. Now, multiple pathways is a fairly interesting concept. We're going to focus on three specific routes today, which is going to be religious, spiritual, and secular. But before we do that, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm tired. As you guys heard on our Wednesday podcast, this is another 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. now recording. It's day 5 of Recovery Coach Academy.
Day 5.
5 days later. And it is kicking my behind. But it's always good. It's like, I love doing this. It's just when you start getting into the later half of the week, honestly, after Tuesday, you're like, man, is it only Tuesday?
Oh my gosh. It's crazy, dude. Because I always feel gung-ho going into it. And then about, like you said, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm just like, oh, I'm getting tired. Thursday, I'm like, dude, are we done yet? And then Friday, it's like, oh man, we're here. And it's not like I don't love the class and I don't love all the material in the class. It's just so much interaction, so much, there's never a dull moment other than breaks and lunch. There's never a moment where you're stopped. It's just constantly go. So it's fun, but it takes the energy out of you for sure.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at is like it's 5 hours of not just talking. It's like 5 hours of motivational interviewing, teaching a lesson. And if you guys know anything about motivational interviewing or active listening, or it does take energy, it takes consciousness to do those things. It's not just mindful chitter chatter,
No, you got to be zeroed in to what's going on in front of you.
And you're staring at a screen. That's probably the worst part about doing this virtually is it's like 5 hours staring at a screen. Eye fatigue is real, at the end of the day, I'm ready to close my eyes. I'm not even tired, but I'm like, I'm going to close my eyes for
real, dude. It's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And we don't take a lunch during when we do online. So you got this break time and it's like, oh my gosh, is this it? 15 minutes that'll flies by and you're like, oh gosh, we got to keep going. So
I'm sitting there trying to smash my chicken.
Eat it as quick as possible. Yeah, for sure.
I sell off my beard, hey, welcome back from your break.
Yeah. like schmelts on your speckle, homeboy. So when we're talking about these three specific, religious, spirituality, secular, I want to preface this conversation by saying, full disclosure, I'm a Christian. My name is Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm a lay preacher. I interact with other people in my faith community. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe all of those things. And I am very, very adamant about my faith. It is intricately interwoven through my life and everything that I do. With that being said, if you want to approach your recovery in a different way, I am the first one to help you facilitate that. I'm not here to judge. That worked for me. I have found my recovery in my faith, in my religion. I have found my recovery there. But if you want to find your recovery somewhere else, how are we going to do it? Let's do it. What can we do? And that's where I want to start this conversation, because I hear a lot of people, and I've actually gotten this. Somebody pulled me aside after a Recovery Coach Academy after we taught this once and said, when you went up there and you said that you were somebody who was a Christian and that you were somebody who was, a lay preacher, I immediately started to turn my ears off because I was like, here we go. This person's just going to be all preachy to me and all this other stuff and feel like they're better than me. But you know what? I'm very pleasantly surprised because I didn't feel that way. I feel like I could talk to you. I feel like we could have a conversation and not let, not your biases not take place. And that's something that I continue to echo that sentiment throughout all of our classes, because we've had very religious people in our classes before. And it's a matter of there gets to a point where it's like, I'm not telling you to not be religious. I'm not telling you to stop believing God. I'm not saying any of those things, but I'm saying you're going to have people in front of you that aren't like that.
Right.
And you're going to have to help them just the same way that you would if somebody that was a little bit more believing or believed in God or believed in Jesus was in front of you, you're going to have to help them the same exact way, and you're going to have to offer them that same help. So that being said, what do you think about today's topic, man?
Today's topic is something. No, I'm just gonna. So I want to preface the same thing, actually, like what you're talking about, because I feel like that's something to discuss really quick on this topic and how it applies to the field. I'm also Christian, like that would be my faith, you know. I would found my recovery through a mix of spiritual and religious recovery. Actually a really good balance between the two for me. And I am a Christian, you know. I do practice Christian things. I go to church, I go to Bible studies, I like to read the word, I like to pray, you know, I like to do those things. But with that being said, that doesn't take over my job, you know. Like
Nice.
it does. All aspects of my life are Christian. I want to get that straight. Like, I mean, I'll pray at work, I don't care, you know. Like if I have a moment, if I'm on lunch, I'll say a little prayer or something like that if I need to. But when I'm meeting with a client, like you said, no matter who it is that's sitting in front of you, no matter what their religious beliefs are, you have to learn how to help that person where they're at. They don't need to know that I'm a Christian. I don't need to sit down and be like, hey, my name's Hunter, I'm a Christian, I'm your peer recovery coach, you know. Like I don't need to make that known.
It's a little bit different for me given my name, but yeah.
Right. Like, my name's Christian.
So it's not like I can underlie or hide it or anything. It's like, yeah. So, but anyways.
Yeah. Anyways. But yeah, I think it's interesting bringing that up, because I feel like for secular, religious, or spiritual, whatever you fit into, we have to be very careful not to let that perpetrate into trying to make someone's recovery for them. Because ultimately speaking, we talk about this over and over and over and over and over in Recovery Coach Academy. It is not your recovery.
Yes.
This is not your path. This is not your walk. What worked for you is not what they want. Then it's not going to work for them. You know, and that comes out, it comes out more than just those three areas. Like obviously like MAT, if we're like an abstinence-based program, we hear about MAT or medically assisted treatment. We're like, no, yeah, that's not okay. That you're still getting high. You know, it's like, we have to be very, very careful about trying to make someone else stick to our recovery. And then, so on that basis, like, I feel like it's hard for Christians to get into a field like this.
Yes.
It was hard for me because I felt really like I can't talk about my faith. Is that okay? How's my conviction? And then through like getting into deeper into scripture, realizing I don't need to proselytize in a verbal sense all the time.
No, through your actions,
Right.
there's a world of different, and you know, I don't want to make this an extreme biblical discussion
Right.
by any means, but I will say your actions speak way louder than your words. You know, go to James. Faith without works is dead, right? And it's like,
Well, I know you by your love for one another. There's a lot of verses.
yeah,
right?
and the truth is like, I will do worlds of good for my faith and for my belief system and for my God and for my Savior. Hit the time, Hunter's phone just went off. But my time, you know, my faith, my time, all those kinds of things, my God, if I just walk these things out and I am of service to other people,
Right.
and instead of necessarily proselytizing, because here's the thing, if I have seen one thing over the years, it is that you do your service, you do it with joy in your heart, you do it with a pep in your step. Eventually people start asking, why are you so happy all the time? And that's when you hit them with the
We're
1,
like
2.
caffeine. Wait,
Caffeine and vengeance. No, rage, lots of rage.
But I think to keep it, I want to keep it from going too biblical during the podcast.
Oh, sure.
I want to keep on our topic, but there's the other side too, where we come in and it's like we don't come in and say, hey, my name's Hunter, I'm an atheist. Hey,
Yeah.
my name's Hunter and I'm a Buddhist. Hey, my name's Hunter and I'm Muslim. You know, we don't do those things, and that's because it's not appropriate. No matter what our beliefs are, that's our beliefs. That affects our life and not the other person's life.
Exactly.
So when we're talking, like, the biggest thing I've ran into as far as looking at the multiple pathways is that one of the two things. Either A, I don't like 12-step programs because I am religious, and I don't like the whole higher power thing because I have a certain God that I want to address.
Fair.
And then the other one I hear is I don't like AA because of I'm very secular and I do not like the concept.
The God of your own understanding.
Right. I don't like the concept of a higher power. And then really I would say with Smart Recovery, obviously you'd see the obvious problems with like a certain faith religious based program, because like anyone who's not of that faith is probably going to find
Yeah. Like why? Yeah.
Right.
Why are you going to be a part of it if you're not a part of it.
And I will say secular programs usually are all encompassing. I have a big respect for secular programs because I feel like there is more of an inclusion that happens because they start to get into the science behind addiction.
100%.
Right.
It's they end up focusing on the highest level of common denominator, which is science. We all struggle with brain issues. We all struggle with chemistry. We all struggle with, chemical imbalance. We all struggle, and people in addiction, we all struggle with neuroplasticity, neurology. We all struggle with these things, and it addresses neuroplasticity. No, but we all try to focus on these things. And when you get to something like, smart recovery, that's going to focus on that model, you will see at least that it is focusing primarily on something that we all have in common. And versus, like you said, the religious,
Right.
It's like, well, we all have that in common, but unless you believe in X, Y, and Z, it's like, then this won't really apply to you. And that's not going to work.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I feel like we talk about this in Recovery Coach Academy, and for any professionals out there listening, it's so important that you verse yourself in the different recovery programs that your community offers. Sadly, I don't think there's a Buddhist-based recovery, and that one would be Refuge Recovery.
Yep.
There is a Christian-based recovery. Celebrate Recovery is a big one. There's also Steps of Freedom. If you guys heard an interview with Mike, he kind of talked about that. It's on Millet Highway here in Lansing. And then I'm
sure there's other.
Yeah, none that I really am aware of, but I'm sure there's some other smaller ones out there, but no like renowned ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then with your 12-step organizations, like know your 12 steps, know what's out there. If someone's like, man, I just want to be around a bunch of other people who use this exact same substance as me, know things about like cocaine, or is it Cocaine Anonymous? Is that okay? I can't remember if it was a little bit longer than that, but CA. We have MA, Methamphetamines Anonymous, or Meth Anonymous. There's specialized groups, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. If someone's not comfortable being around alcoholics or not comfortable being around people using narcotics, just know those things. Know there's a lot of options out there. There's also SA for people who are struggling with like sexual addictions and things like that. And then we go into like, I feel like there's nothing for Muslim communities. I may be wrong, but
not off the top of my head, I don't know of, but I'm sure there probably is something out there that has been developed.
And I know I was talking to one of our coworkers out there, because he's really big on bridging the gap in between recovery communities and trying to be all inclusive to different cultures and being sensitive to that, bringing to where everybody can find a recovery some way that fits their beliefs. And he wasn't aware of any either. And he's trying to, there is a program. Okay. So there is a program, but there's none around here.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the name of that program is, but he's trying to get it brought up to Lansing. Same with, there's an Indian based one.
Yep.
And things like that. So there's there are some specialized groups, and obviously, like, as you can tell, we're not gonna be well versed in everything out there, but knowing that there are options out there is very important, because man, if I see a recovery, come in front of me and they're like, man, I'm a really atheist person, or I'm really not atheist. I guess I really don't believe in anything. I really have a problem with higher power. I don't believe in any God. I believe in science. And I'm like, well, you should try out sober recovery.
Yeah.
That would be a good fit. Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I think, it's beneficial for us to at least break down a little bit of what we're talking about when we say that these three branches of recovery. So religious recovery is when you find your recovery in a religious structure. And here's the important part of this, because oftentimes we share this in our classes or whatever it might be, and people immediately think like, oh, you mean like smart recovery? Yes, smart recovery could be something like that, but there are other people who take the religion at face value, whatever it is, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, whatever it is, and inside of that, they find their recovery based just by reading the text or by walking out whatever their holy scripture or whatever it might be says. And it isn't necessarily like we meet once a week in the church basement or in the mosque basement and we sit around a circle and we tell everybody how our week was and this is what's going on. It's like, no, they just find solace inside of their religion respectively, and they stop using because of that. Spirituality could follow alongside that. They can be deeply intertwined, but spirituality also can be, maybe non-secular, or maybe it's something where it's they believe in a wider spectrum of the universe. They believe in, not necessarily faith in a deity, but they could believe in things like Reiki. They believe in like a spiritual sense of the world, and they view the world through that lens, yoga and all that kind of stuff.
Right. I've heard a lot with spirituality. Something my sponsor talked about is like not necessarily just your relationship with a higher power, but also your relationship with self.
Yes.
Your spirit sort of thing. Like we talked about in the step work, there's things about like your spirit, how your spirit was damaged, and or how your spiritual life was damaged or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, not at all, or I didn't really have much of a spiritual life because I didn't know God at that point. But like realizing when we talk about spiritual too, it's like the inside of who you are and stuff like that, like repairing those things, I'd say is a huge part of spiritual recovery. We see that in 12 steps, we see it in different programs, and also in self-awareness and stuff like that as well. So,
and then secular, which is the choice to pursue your recovery path without any form of spirituality or God.
Did you say the choose?
The choices. No, but here's the thing, because each one of those fields has, I think, benefit. Right. Each one of those fields has some drawbacks. I mean, that's just the reality. And I'm not saying, drawbacks just in general. I'm just saying they have drawbacks for some people. They have benefits for some people. Right. I have seen people be unbelievably successful in secular recovery. I've seen people be unbelievably successful in religious recovery. I've seen people be very unsuccessful in all the three of those things, and then they end up switching to another one, and they end up finding success. It's just a matter of what works specifically for the individual. Now, I will say with secular recovery, there's more options. Just plain and simple. I believe that whether it's smart recovery, you start to get, because in secular recovery, you get smart recovery, you get IOP, you get inpatient treatments, you get LifeRing, you get all these other ones, and there's a lot of options there, and those options are based in neurochemistry. That's based in science. Usually it's some form of approach. Now there is past traumas. Now there is sometimes a holistic approach inside of those, but more oftentimes than not, it is focusing primarily on trauma. It is focusing primarily on, how do we get better from this thing? Whereas religious recovery doesn't always do that. Religious recovery, a lot of times it's focusing on the brokenness inside of oneself and reconciling oneself to oneself so that you can reconcile yourself to God. Mm-hmm. Oh, excuse me. And there's a lot of people who, by feeling that they have reconciled themselves to God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, they feel reconciled to self. So they feel that because they have reconciled to the universe, they feel like, I have been forgiven from my sins, or I have, truly recanted and repented, or whatever it might be, that by doing that, they have, essentially flipped a switch and they feel reconciled to themselves so that they can start improving their life. Now, reconciled to self, don't get me wrong, it's not like I flip a switch and all of a sudden everything in my life is magically poof into existence and it's great. It's like I've reconciled myself or to myself so that I no longer need to approach life how I have been before. And then oftentimes, specifically in religion, you see this, they then insert themselves into a sociological framework. What I mean, it's I was this thing, I now believe in God, higher power, deity, whatever, universe. I now want to be this thing. I feel reconciled to my God, my deity, the universe, whatever. And in that reconciliation, I have found reconciliation in myself. Therefore, my brokenness has been mended. And that brokenness that caused me to do these things, I am now going to walk out in the predetermined set of rules that is here, which means maybe in like Islam, I'm not going to drink anymore, because like in certain more conservative sects of Islam, you don't drink alcohol, right? Or in Judaism, I'm not going to eat pork anymore. I'm not going to eat, lobster anymore. I'm going to put myself under dietary law. Or in Christianity, it's like, I'm going to stop sinning. So I'm not going to look at pornography anymore. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to lie anymore, cheat, steal, whatever.
Right.
And they find that solace is, I've been reconciled to God. Therefore, I've reconciled myself to myself, and I continue to get closer to my now reconciled deity by following the rules that they have set forward by revelation or whatever. Have I done an adequate example of confusing you completely?
Yes.
I mean, do you get what I'm saying, though?
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. That's pretty much the framework of what religious recovery would look like. Yes. Pulling yourself into a congregation and following yourself by religious guidelines. It's pretty much the layman terms of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I mean, it's just putting yourself under finding your recovery by putting yourself under structure,
Right.
basically, which is like, because there's people, here's the thing, and I've seen this too many times as a lay preacher and as somebody who advises. I've advised several pastors, and I've preached behind many different pulpits and many different denominations. What is a commonality that I see is people like structure. People like when there's rules. People like when there's a do's and do nots. People like when there's unwritten rules. People like when there's expectation. That's not necessarily everybody, but there's a vast portion of people in religion that's what they like. They want to have rules regulating them because they feel like if they follow those rules, then they're doing the right thing.
I do not like that.
Well, no, and I know, but there's a lot of people that do.
And I agree with that. I think as human beings, we're and this might be controversial. I don't really know. But I feel like
Do you really care?
Yeah, no, I really don't. That's probably what I should have said. It just sounded less sensitive. So I feel like human beings are meant to be governed. They're meant to be led. They're meant to have authority, because otherwise we kind of devolve into chaos. I don't feel like most people would argue with that, because like it's been shown that like we do better when there's some form of order established. Like when when there's not a bunch of leaders running around and there's like a established leadership, we seem to do better.
One, it's an interesting concept of kind of the archetypal self, not going too far into Jungian psychology, but the single individual is governed by a subset of rules that they've established upon themselves,
Right.
and that the universe is established upon them. I can't fly, so therefore I won't jump out of a building.
No, I
That
can't.
is something that, you can't.
Superman can fly too.
Yeah, well, there you go. But that's the rule that the universe has perpetrated on me that I cannot do.
Right.
Versus, I'm not going to eat that poison berry. Could I eat it? Yes, it's capable for me to eat it. But if I eat it, I could get sick, and I don't want to be sick because I'm going to feel like crap later.
Mhm.
Therefore, that is a rule that I've perpetrated on myself. Other than that, if I'm left in the wilderness, I can get stark naked and run through there like a wild man screaming my head off. Would it be a good idea? No. Would I look like an idiot? Probably. Would it, but at the end of the day, will there be serious negative recourse, barring that nobody sees me? No. So it's not necessarily a rule that I have to impose on myself. Versus, okay, now there's another person involved, two of us. Okay, so the same rules apply, which is we still can't fly, so let's not jump. Universal rule. We shouldn't eat those berries. Why? Because we will get sick. That's a rule we have to impose on ourselves. But I now can't run stark naked through the woods. Why? Because you feel uncomfortable with me being naked. So therefore, it's a rule that we apply on both of us. And I think that people in general, that is what they search for in religion. They search for that third set of rules of, I want rules implied to me by my community, but the community is saying that those rules are universal and they're from God. And that's why I think a lot of people join religion. I'm sorry if I got way too deep, way too quick there for people.
You're going a little bit far in there.
Yeah, but that's just a little side taste of what my thought process often is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to realize. I kind of want to touch on. I think every recovery pathway has a authority. Secular, I mean, in secular pathways, it's more structured. There's power differentials there. Like IOP, obviously, there's a therapist, there's group therapy, there's peer recovery coaches, usually some other things in there too, depending on the program. But there's a lot of structure. There's power differentials, and there are sets of rules. There are things like do this, don't do this, don't do this, do that, look at this, cope with this, and it's like you have set guidelines. You're given advice. And then in smart recovery, we see the same thing where it's very structured. You have to have some sort of training to do it. I don't know how extensive that training is, but it is cognitive behavioral therapy based. So you do have to have some form of training in that thing. So there's still a power differential there. There's the facilitators and there's participants. Peer facilitated group, same thing. There's a facilitator, and I know it's called peer facilitated group, but just like peer recovery coach, there is a power differential, whether we want to recognize it or not.
Yeah, the power differential simply revolves around the peer individual. There's rules still governing the group, and the
Right.
power differential or the rules manifest through the peer that's facilitating the group. That's all.
Right. So there's guidelines, like even in peer facilitated group, we literally set down, I don't know what other peer facilitated groups do this. I do in mine. The first time that we sat down together in a new group, it's what are our ground rules? Let's come up with a set of ground rules. We don't break these ground rules, and these are what we're going to follow while we're inside of this group.
We don't talk about Fight Club.
Exactly. Rule number 1
And 2.
and 2, and then there's no more rules.
Mhm.
And then we all fight each other.
Yep.
So it's pretty fun. But no, so like there's sets of rules, and we come up with them, and then it's like, does everybody agree to follow these rules while they're in this class? Yes, 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 yes. Cool. Does anybody not agree to follow these rules, or does anybody have problems with following these rules throughout the entirety of the class? As long as nobody says yes, we move on. Somebody new comes in, we repeat the process. We look at the ground rules, we go through them. Are you okay with following these rules? Do you want to add anything to these rules? And go from there. So there's still a structured set of rules. And then we look at spiritual based programs. So the ones that obviously always come to mind for me when I think of spiritual based programs is going to be NA, because it's like it's a spiritual,
Those are,
non-religious
yeah,
program,
right
it's
off the
called,
clip.
right?
Those are the easiest, the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, those are like the ones right there. So when we look at those, there's still a structure, right? There's still a set of guidelines, a set of rules. There's literally the traditions, which are a set of rules for the group. And then we have inside of the literature, there's a lot of rules for the individual, like stay sober, be abstinent. And it tells us a lot about ourselves. There's a lot of actualization. Is that the right word?
Actualization.
Thank you. That's there. And like, there's a lot of things that are governing us in there. So like, I feel like in recovery, there's always going to be, no matter what pathway is chosen, there is a power structure there and a list of guidelines that we have to stay within. I feel like that's very comforting for people in recovery because quite frankly, for me at least, I'm going on a tangent right now. I don't care.
No, I think it's, but finish your thought. Cause it's,
yeah, no, I'm going to.
One thing that I have to say, flow of thought is possibly where you find the largest discoveries about yourself and about what you're trying to say. Like, because when you start to work things out, and I've seen professors do this before, and I've seen lecturers do this before, and it's magnificent. It's like, this is how humanity should try when you're lecturing in particular, or preaching for that matter. You should try to communicate like this of continue your flow of thought, because you will start to think of new things while you're saying it. And then you will start to think about those things. And then you're going to start to think like, how do I, that's not right. And then I got to argue. Yeah.
My flow's gone.
Exactly.
It's gone now. No. So darn it. Might actually be gone.
Yep. You said I didn't, or I'm going on a tangent, but
yeah,
here we go.
Yeah, I know. It was something before that. Anyways.
Structure, AA, NA.
Structure, AA, NA, all of them are structure. Oh yeah. So for me, yeah, I remember. So for me, when I came into recovery, I wanted someone to tell me how to do it because I had no idea. Sobriety was hard. It was scary. It was new. It's like a baby coming out of the womb. It's like, oh, it's bright in here. Someone slapped me. I don't like this, you know? I think they still slap babies. I don't know if that was a thing. But there's newborn babies. I got Caitlin staring at me like, better not be slapping my baby. So anyways, there's like this new world that I was dropped into. So it was very hard for me to try to figure that on my own. I needed someone to tell me like, stick to these guidelines and you're going to do better. Do these things, do these steps, do these activities, talk to a therapist, go to this, do this, communicate with people, go out and don't isolate. Like someone to say like consciously, you need to not do these things. And you need to do these things in order to get better. I needed that in my recovery because without those things, I would have figured that out because I never practiced those things. This is a whole new game to me.
Well, and I think it's a very interesting concept, and you might be touching on a point because we say this all the time in our classes. We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about the importance, especially on identifying things for recovery that are inside of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So it's like if the recovery is saying they want to go back to college and they're still living under a bridge, then we need to have a conversation about like, there's some subset of things and we need to got to get you stable housing, got to get you stable food, got to get you, clean water, all these things before we can even talk about college. So let's focus on those and then we'll focus on this, because if you don't do these things and oftentimes that's where we see recoveries end up failing, right? As they put the cart before the horse. They say like, if I just get this job, then I'll be able to pay off my car and I can live in my car and then I can get my house. And it's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
That ain't a good idea. That is not going to happen. But with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the things that we often talk about is kind of creating purpose, because we say this all the time. One of the only two reasons for usually a recovery to relapse is what?
Unpack trauma and unmet potential.
Unpack trauma, unmet potential. What's unpack trauma?
I think we talked about this in earlier podcasts as well, but unpack trauma is exactly what it sounds like. There's something that caused an individual to begin their use. There was something there. Okay, I guess either A or B. Either A, you were traumatized as a child and we have some complex traumatization. I might have used that word wrong. I'm not sure.
That's right.
But there's traumatization that happened over our childhood that led us into our active addiction. Or maybe we just decided that we picked up drugs one day and that it felt really good. So we went with it and most people, I would say, are traumatized during their addiction if that's the case. So either way, there's traumatization there that needs to be dealt with.
Okay, and then what's unmet potential?
Unmet potential is unmet potential. So whatever potential you have, it's basically whatever that potential is different for each individual, and it doesn't have to be like a full potential met. It's just like you have to strive for something. You have to be working towards a goal. You have to be like feeling like you're accomplishing your life, or feeling like you're living a life worth living. Otherwise, why wouldn't I want to use drugs?
Yeah, if you're
You know?
just basically, you don't have a job, you're not really, I mean, or you have a job, but for the last 2 years, you've just been going to work, and yeah, you've been sober and you've been going to your meetings, but there's really been no forward momentum. You know, you feel like you should be going to college, or you feel like you should be doing better at work, or maybe you need to change of scenery at work or something like that. And you just get to that point where it's just like, well, why wouldn't I use?
Or
Because I
maybe-
could just do this and use at the same time. It would be funner than this.
Right. Or maybe you need to be a manager at your job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but so unpack trauma, unfulfilled potential. But we always say, okay, how do you create purpose inside of a recovery's life? And it's really, it takes two things. That's it. And we say this to our classes, and they never believe us, or they always look at them like, really, two things? That's all it takes to get potential? Like, yes, that's two things. All you need to get potential. First and foremost, you have to find self-discipline. This is one of the most, it is the most difficult thing to find.
Right.
Self-discipline is so hard. Because there's nobody else in the universe that can make you self-disciplined. You have to find that in yourself.
Right.
You have to become self-disciplined. So that's number one. Number two, responsibility.
I'm like how the first one's like the hardest thing.
Yeah, it is the hardest thing in the world. It's the hardest thing in the world. Self-discipline, responsibility, and you will start to find purpose.
It's like I said two things. I didn't say two easy things.
Yeah, no. It's very difficult, but self-discipline, and here's the thing: fostering self-discipline. We tell this to our academies all the time. Fostering self-discipline in recovery. Start small at first, grow over time. Small things. Wake up in the morning at the same time. That's a self-discipline. You can do that. Set 6 alarms. If you say you're going to wake up at 6, then set alarm at 6, alarm at 6:01, alarm at 6:02, 6:03, 6:04, 6:05. So you got 6 different alarms going off. Boom, 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 boom. Right. So it's like you're going to wake up. So self-discipline there. And then B, make your bed. Jump out of bed, make your bed. Not that hard. Takes you less than a minute. I'm not saying you have to do it military style, everything tucked in, completely flat, take a ruler to it. Yep, it looks good.
A dime off it.
Bounce a dime off it. No, you don't have to do that. But make your bed, wake up at the same time. And then we say eat a protein breakfast, high protein breakfast. Just get things going so that some endorphins start going. But self-discipline is the hardest one, but it's the massive one. And then responsibility. And that's eventually going to lead to self-fulfillment and purpose. But we tell our recoveries, and I think they just don't grasp it sometimes. And we tell our recovery coach academies, and they just don't grasp it sometimes, of when we're talking about like discipline and structure, people thrive for rules.
Right.
Like one of the major reasons people start using in the first place, and I've seen it too many times not to say this, is people lacked rules when they were children. It's not always the case, because sometimes it is trauma-based, and sometimes it's trauma-based in the other thing, which it's like there was trauma and then the rules were too rigid. But it's like people lack direction. They thrive when they're told direction, when they're told things. I can't tell you how many times I've worked, especially with younger recoveries, because I talk to younger recoveries and older recoveries in different ways. Older recoveries I define as like 45 and older. I say, okay, what do you want to accomplish? We can get those things accomplished. Let's get you a doctor. Let's get you, a therapist. Let's get you these things. Let's get you a job, a nice white picket fence, something like that. What are we going to do? Okay, yeah. And they're about it. That's great. Younger recoveries, and I told you this, and I tell every recovery this, that's from the ages of like
You have no excuse.
18 to 35. What is the exact words I used?
You have no excuse.
And what did I say after that?
I don't know.
Okay, how did I define no excuse?
So it basically defining it as your age. So my age, I was 19 when I came into sobriety. So at my age, I had no excuse not to make it the best life I wanted. Like the most successful life. I have all the time in the world. I could have a doctorate by the time I'm some amount of age, 12 years.
Like 32.
Yeah.
And I use that example over and over again. It's like, because and if anybody's listening to this right now that's in that age bracket, you have no excuse. There's no excuse. Yeah, but nope. No, you don't. But then my uncle no, you don't. I can't reiterate that enough. It's like I will be the first person. You may have mental health stuff going on. Okay, I understand. You may have had horrible things happen to you. Okay, I understand. Get the help from the mental health. Go to a therapist. Go to a clinical. Go to somebody that might be able to get you medication if necessary. That's okay. That is okay. I'll be the first one. That's okay. Yes. But you don't have an excuse not to go do that. You need to go do that. If you need to go take care of that, then go take care of that.
Mhm.
And as far as like trauma is considered, same thing. Go take care of that. But at the end of the day, playing this game of like, well, I just don't feel and I can't get it. It's like you don't have an excuse. You're 19 years old. It takes on average anywhere from 7 to 12 years to get a doctorate in this country of the United States. And without a GED, it can be 12 to 14 years. So by the time, if you're 19, by the time you get your GED and then you go get your, or you go to your undergraduate and then you graduate and get that doctorate degree, you could be what? In your generally 31, 32, 33, you retire out at 65, which means that you have 32 years that you can be in practice as a doctor. You have no excuse. And that's what I tell people all the time. But there it is again, self-discipline.
Yep.
It takes self-discipline. It's like, and if you are unwilling, there's a point where, and I reiterate this over and over again to recoveries, you have to get really humble. Let people tell you what to do for a while and walk it out. Walk through the motions. You'll start to find success. And when you start to find success, then you're going to want to be like, maybe I'm going to want to buy into this.
Right.
Okay, I'll buy in. And then when you buy in, oh my God, the world opens to you.
Right.
So I know that's generally, I would say that's all three domains: religious, spiritual, and secular. We're talking about underlying, under basis, archetypal things right there.
Yeah, and I will say I've noticed, and this is something where I would disdain a little bit from religious recovery, is like when you're talking about set direction. Like I said, I'm a Christian, but like I said, I don't really like rules inside of the church that are like, I like scripture. I like scriptural rules. I like unspoken rules. I don't like church norms, church politics per se. But I feel like it sometimes gets a little bit more structured in a certain very precise direction. Like you get that push in a very certain direction. I don't necessarily like that. Same with our meeting with recovery. It's like I'm pushing them to squeaky sound. I'm pushing them to reach a potential, but whatever that potential is, I don't care.
Yeah.
I want you to figure out what you want and go for it.
I have a job, not my potential.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is like, I feel like I like that about 12-step groups as well. Is it's basically like they deal a lot with like more the internal, what's going on with you sort of thing. Like what's going on deep within you, what resentments are you holding, what stuff do you need to apologize for? And then being a very good human being. I really like that because like, I don't really care, quite frankly. This is where I'm a little bit different than a lot of people. Like, I don't care really where I end up like success wise in my life. Obviously I want to make a good life for myself. I want to get a good job. I'm going to go to college, but I don't really necessarily care. Like if I'm making a buku bucks and I got a super, super fancy house out in the hills, that's not my dream. My dream is to be a very, very good human being.
Yeah.
I want to be a very caring person. I want to be a very loving person. I want to have people that respect me, people that will, like, I don't crave people's respect, but I want to be a respectable person. I'll say that. I want to feel good about myself. I want to help people. So that's my desire. So I strive for that. You know what I'm saying? So like I find a purpose, find a direction and shoot for it. That's what I like about different recovery programs and like where their aim is sometimes like if your specific direction is I want to be the best Christian there is, or the best Muslim there is, or the best Buddhist there is, or whatever the case may be, then religious recovery is probably a great place for you to get started because they will excel you in your faith.
Yes.
But as far as like, if you want to be a decent human being, secular recovery is a lot of that because like I said, when we talk about spiritual, we're looking inwardly a lot. It's a lot of self-realization and realizing like what is going on with me. And I feel like faith is that sometimes too. Religious and secular do intertwine a lot. And then are not religious and secular, religious and spiritual. And then when we talk about secular, that's mostly like whatever's going on with your brain, we can help fix that. And then we can go from there sort of thing.
Sure.
I do respect that a lot. I do like peer facilitated type groups as well in secular recovery because it gives an open conversation for like digesting what's going on in your life. I've had some really rich conversations facilitating peer groups. And it's like, sometimes you bring something up and you're like, man, that's a rough week. And then you get 15 other guys in there that are like, I actually had a week like that. And this is what I did to help me.
Yes.
And then I got 15 other coping mechanisms going at this guy. I'm like, cool, my job here is done.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of peer facilitated groups, whether it be religious, spiritual, or secular. oftentimes I found if you just come with vulnerability and honesty, the world will change by the time that group is over. Maybe it's your perspective, or maybe your story will affect somebody else. I had a recovery once that, was going to do a few different occasions would go do talks, and it was their first talk in particular. And, they were a part of this group, and I'm not going to out the group. I'm not going to out anything like that. But one of the things that kept on happening is like
It was
group,
Fight Club.
Yep. The group was silent. They, didn't really want to talk. And I finally just approached them and nudged them a little bit. And I'm like, here's the deal. The group doesn't want to talk because everybody's afraid to take the step, and everybody's afraid of vulnerability. If you take the first steps to be unchained and just be as vulnerable as possible and just start talking and tell your story, watch what happens. And they did. And guess what happened? The levees freaking broke. Everybody started talking. And from then on out, it was a different atmosphere entirely, because it was like, people are afraid. I mean, we see this. What do? We ask for, okay, who wants to go first in our class? And almost 100% of the time, it is about 30 seconds to a minute of silence. And then some person says, I'll go. And then the rest of them, what? And then the next person, because people are afraid to go first. They're not afraid to go second. They're just afraid to go first, because they're afraid to, like, people are going to judge me. I didn't do it right. I misunderstood. Yeah. Yes. So I encourage people, do it with humility, because I've seen some cocky people that always got to go first and like, let me go. And then, it just doesn't work. Do it with humility. Take a second. If they ask people to go first, count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll go. And then jump right into it. So it's not, because I was a person, anybody that knows me is I'm an extrovert. And a lot of the time I was thinking about that process of like, oh my God, we're going to be here for so much longer because nobody wants to be here. I'll go. Like, and then it was always like that, where it's like, worst job, worst thing that anybody's doing. Can we have any volunteer before they even done? I'll go. It just to show that it's like, let's get this process moving. Right. Be the first person to step up in your group, and things will change. Be the first person to be humble enough and bold enough to speak about yourself, and things will change.
See, you're nicer than I am in my classes. I say, who wants to go first? And then after about 5 seconds into silence, I'm like, if you don't volunteer, I will pick you.
I will call on you. You just start lobbing threats immediately off the get. I don't know you, but I'll call on you.
Yeah, I'm just being honest here.
I'm just being honest.
I don't have time for this. We got 1 hour. Okay. But no, I like that. I like what you're saying. I feel like the more vulnerable it gets, the more relation there is, because I feel like in all religion, I keep saying religious, in all recovery-based groups, there is there's an uncomfortability of like, how deep do we go on this? Am I the only one who's done these things?
Yes.
And then it's like, I actually,
first off, no.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, no, everyone's done that, or at least maybe not everyone, but there's a lot of people.
Vast portion of people have done it. And
right. There's one guy I respect, because he will break open the meeting and say the most off the wall, shocking thing
all the time. Yeah, I know exactly the individual that you're talking about.
Yeah, and he'll just go into it like, I used to do this, and this.
We can't say it because we'll be censored by iTunes, but yes.
But yeah, so he does those, and then I'm like, and then everyone else, they're like, I did that too. And it was hard. And like,
but like, you need people like that.
Yeah. And then everyone's comfortable, because it's like, oh, he's the worst guy in the room. Cool. All right.
Clearly. No, but I think you need, because I know the individual that you're talking about exactly, because I've seen that individual do the same thing. And there's something powerful in that. And there's something, because I don't think he's doing that for anybody else but himself. And I don't mean that in like a selfish way. I think it's like, that's expressing him because that's what's manifested in him. And that's something that they feel that they need to talk about. Right. They feel like that is, like this, I've had a rough day, and this is something that I need to talk about, because I've been in multiple situations with that specific individual. And it's the same thing every time. Mm-hmm. It's not anything new, and I don't mean new as in like, he says different things every time, but it's like, it's not new that that's something that he does.
It's a shock factor either way. Right?
But it's great. And it's great. My favorite part is like, people that know that individual have come to expect that, and they know how it goes. People that it's their first time, like seeing that individual, they don't know what to make, especially if it's their first time in something like that. And they see that individual do that. They're like, what the hell did I just enter? It's so funny.
Yeah.
But that,
it opens a door.
It does. It opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, I know when I came into my recovery, that was one thing that was really hard for me was talking about some of the things that I was ashamed of. And it was through my first step 4 actually, and in A actually is where I worked this one. First step 4, and I told my sponsor like a few things that I'd never told anybody. Like it was like just going to the grave, son. And I was always so ashamed of him. He's like, that's actually really common. Like you're not really special, or you're not unique in that situation.
You're not special. That's
We're all special, we're just not unique.
great therapist. You're not special.
No, you're special. You're just not unique.
Yeah.
You're a garden variety. No. So it was freeing for me to like realize that. So I feel like that when we get into these different recovery oriented things, it's beautiful.
For sure. But with that being said, man, we're already at the end of our time.
There we go.
So just like that, every Monday we do Science of Addiction. Every Wednesday we do meditations, and every Friday we interview. Have a good one.